I haven't got time for that right now, or now's not a good time. How many times have we all found ourselves saying things like that to people around us? And of course, prioritising things like this is extremely important, because if you don't get it right, you're never going to escape the 9 to 5 rat race. Which is why I thought this week we'll do a slightly different YouTube upload on the channel. A very important one though, because the reality is everybody's got time. Now is the best time, and if you do it right, then it's far easier to progress in the direction that you actually want to than you may already think. But this isn't a video just to pump you up. I'm going to share with you some practical advice, structure and strategy on screen that will help you make progress faster. I'll also include an example. So you just need two things: one, understanding, and a little bit of time to do the compounding. So those things are goals, records, understanding Pareto's distribution if you don't already, and a little patience to let it play out. Don't overcomplicate it. It's a very simple strategy and it works. So starting backwards, first of all, I want to talk about time. Now I want to keep this point extremely brief because I think it's relatively obvious, but in the modern world we're all spending our time on things that we don't necessarily realise. So I think the most important point to this is to actually visualise, maybe do this exercise yourself, and understand where your time is going and what is actually costing you and what you're choosing to do over doing something else. So very briefly, there's lots of things you could put on a list here, but the two top ones, which I think apply to almost everybody, myself included, is screen time on your phone and Netflix. Both are trackable, both of them you can go and look through your history, see how much time you have actually spent there. You can go onto your iPhone, you can see the screen time and see what you spend per day. On average in the UK, I believe it is actually 4 hours a day currently. I spend about 2, so I'm going to say 2 hours on phone screen time, and I'm going to allow 2 hours for Netflix too. Again, if you get sucked into a big series and you're binge watching with the missus of an evening, then it's highly likely you're spending a lot more. So I think that's quite modest, but you can see 2 hours a day on each of those means 14 hours a week, 60 hours a month, 730 hours a year. That's a lot of time. If you then assign a rate, this is just a little bit more powerful, and some people don't like doing this because it kind of makes them confront what they're actually spending their time on, and dare I say it, wasting their time on. But if you say what's minimum wage now, about 8 quid, if you're on minimum wage, then per year, 2 hours of phone time and 2 hours of Netflix time per day, which I would say are not necessarily needed, is costing you about 11 grand a year, or your time's worth 11 grand a year, even if you haven't got that particular work. It doesn't take a lot. If you up it to sort of like 30 quid an hour, you're on a half decent rate, then 43 grand a year is a lot of money to be spending on something that isn't necessarily moving you forward. That is the point. But the big point with this also is actually seeing it, rather than going, I think I don't spend too much time on my phone. Go to screen time on your iPhone or your Android, whatever you've got, I'm sure they've got it too. Have a little look and see how much time you're actually spending on these devices. Check your Netflix and see how many hours a week you're actually spending watching Netflix. Because the whole point of what I'm about to share with you is to make time work for you, not against you. Currently, if you're doing these things and you're saying someday to other important tasks, then quite frankly, you're the only one that's actually robbing yourself. So now we've established the fact that you've actually got some hidden time that you may not have realised you have, please take 2 seconds just to tap the like button down below on this video. It really helps out and I appreciate it. Thank you. So to have no goals and no record, it means you're almost guaranteed to fail, which is the next 2 points which are absolutely crucial. If you succeed and you're not having any kind of goals and you're not keeping track of how you're actually making progress, then it's highly likely that your success is attributed to luck or good fortune. So the key point overall here is to work on yourself rather than working for yourself, which is something I find myself talking to other people about on a fairly regular basis. I had a friend the other day, he's got his own business, he was saying, what should I do to move forwards? And it was like, you spend so much time working for your business, you haven't actually got time to work on your business, but that's the only way you're actually going to make things grow. Now think about that in terms of your actual life too, because people often do it, get hung up in the day-to-day stuff, and they don't have time to actually improve their overall situation. So first of all, you need to have some goals, and you might need a larger goal. It doesn't have to be complicated, it doesn't have to be complex. It's probably better off to write it down, break it down a little bit, and then break it into smaller chunks, but you need to be specific and defined in what you're actually trying to achieve. If you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. The chunks that attribute to your overall goal also need to be small smaller and manageable. So it's not an absolute slog each day when you get up and you say, hey, I've got to do, you know, this small task, it's going to lead into this bigger picture that you actually want and the progress you want to make. But they need to be manageable, digestible, and you need to want to carry on doing them. They can't be too difficult and stressful. On top of that, they also need to be realistic. You can't just say, look, I'm going to make 10 million quid this year, because that's highly unlikely. It's not that reasonable, and that period of time, there's not a very good chance of you actually achieving that. So they need to be definable, specific, realistic, that are possible to do within set time frame, that you can do and manage and not get too het up about in the process of doing so. So goals are absolutely crucial. But the goals are absolutely useless unless you are keeping some type of analytics or records and numbers. As I said there, I suggest using, if you're managing your time and you want more time, then look at something like screen time on your phone. It's not a case of, I think I spend, a few hours a day on my phone. You can look at it and it can tell you, and it will tell you which apps you are wasting your time on. And the same applies if you're doing something and you're progressing towards your goal. For example, people do match betting on the side to make a side income, and they can say, oh, I made £20 here, I made £10 there, keep track of it in Excel, or if you're using something like ProfitRush.com on the profit tracker. But the point is, you need a defined, specific record which actually tells you the numbers. And that may hurt your feelings at times, but it's extremely important because you need to be able to measure what you're doing. At the end of the day, a great saying is, what gets measured is what gets done. It completely wipes out that part of you where it's, I thought I knew what I was doing and I think that is what is productive. That is not how the modern world works. Look at things like Google, Facebook, all these different things. Analytics, analytics, analytics. You need to implement that in your own life too, because that is the only way to truly know where you're at, where you're going, if you're achieving it, how you can tweak it. And you may also find you certainly will find there's things along the way where they're a lot more effective and you didn't realise they were the reason that something was effective. But when you've got those analytics, you can zoom in on those and you can improve certain areas, do them more, and find the things that were a waste of time, that you might not have thought was such a waste of time, and get rid of them. For example, Netflix, screen time on your phone. So let's run through a very quick example to put all of this into context and lay it out nicely for anyone who might not quite be grasping what I'm trying to say here. Now, this brings me on to a very important point, which is Pareto's principle. So many of you are probably familiar with this. For those of you who aren't, we'll put a link in the description down below. But Pareto's principle basically says there's an 80-20 rule in terms of distribution of pretty much all things. So, 80% of roads take 20% of traffic, whereas 20% of people hold 80% of the wealth. Now, when you're doing any task, you need to think about, where is the 80, where is the 20? Focus on the 20 as often as possible, because when you focus on that 20, that is the most effective part of what you're doing. So that's what you want to implement into your goals, and also find the 20% within your records and your previous successes, so you can focus on them going forward. From there, you just need time to play out and do the compounding for you to see a more fuller set of results, if you like. So to run a brief example about what I'm talking about here, in case some people haven't grasped onto the key components of what I'm talking about, you might have a goal or a target to say something like, hey, I want a little bit more money so I can go on holiday at the end of this year. Now, we should all be allowed out sort of mid-June, hopefully, end of June. But say you want to go on holiday in September. That means between now and September, you need to raise, say, £1,000 capital, which works out at £166 a month, because there's 6 months between now and September. That's £41.50 per week. Not a huge amount of money to build up to get yourself a nice holiday booked. So in terms of Pareto's distribution, you want to find places where you can achieve that £40 as quick as possible with limited effort and limited risk. I'm going to use match betting for the example. There's other videos on this channel about that if anyone's not familiar with it. But say, how much time have I got to allocate to this? Well, we go back to the Netflix example, the screen time example, and we say, we're going to allow 1 to 2 hours a week. bare minimum. That would be extremely easy for pretty much everyone, I'm almost certain of it. So all you've got to do is bring down that screen time and focus it on some match betting. Now you can use profitrush.com, again we'll put a link in the description down below, but you need to focus on the higher value offers for the limited amount of time, and you've only got to raise £40 a week, and then you've just got to keep that up, track it, and as you see that tracking come out in the wash, if you like, you'll see that it's worth doing, and so you actually continue, and it becomes a self-fulfilling, motivating prophecy. Now that's easily done with something like 2-ups, for example, or even with Cheltenham just around the corner, you could probably make a fair chunk of that £1,000 in that week alone. But what you do need to do is be defined on what days you're going to try and make the money by, what weeks you're going to make the money by, and how are you going to do it, and how is the most effective way of doing that with the 20%. So give it some thought and apply this framework to the things that you want to achieve in your life, and I promise you it will reward you more than you could possibly ever imagine after you've subscribed to this channel and tap that like button down below. Thank you.